Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Oranges Toolkit Fruit for Thought today. Hello and welcome to Dr. Stan Rodski.
Yep. Hi, Nick. How are you going?
Very good. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's an absolute pleasure.
So just by way of introduction, I should say, Stan, you are a neuroscientist, researcher, presenter, and author. You are a highly respected scientist and an authority on how to improve mental health performance in high-stress situations. You're a psychologist that have practiced for 30 years, but more importantly, the work that Stan does at the moment is on peak performance, and he's a neuroscientist and wellness expert in Australia and internationally. So we're very lucky to have you. I should say, more importantly, at the moment, your latest book is The Neuroscience of Excellent Sleep, which is out by HarperCollins. So that's some of the stuff we're going to be talking about today. For those who are interested in the topic, you can go and get a copy of that online afterwards. So Stan, welcome.
No, thank you again. And the book's just out in the UK now and America next month.
Oh, fabulous. Okay.
There you go.
So I'm supposed to ask you or fess up early on how much sleep we had last night, but I feel like everybody's sleep last night was determined about the level of anxiety that was watching women's football. So probably how much sleep did everybody get last night is irrelevant, maybe the night before. Is there a perfect amount of sleep every night? Is it supposed to be 8 hours?
Yeah, no, look, it's the answer there is no perfect amount. So, but I'm not giving a way out to those people who insist on their low levels of sleep is just fine for them. That is not the case. In general, we need 7.5 hours. Now, I'm saying that as I'm probably an adult audience listening to me, because 7.5 hours fits in what we would say are 5 90-minute cycles. That's what we need to get through our cycles. If you think about those 5 nines, 450, 420 for 7, another 30 for another half an hour, there's 7.5 hours. Now, we tend to sleep a little bit more or a little bit less. We accommodate it for all sorts of factors, but 7.5 hours is about right. Some sleep a lot longer, some sleep a little bit less, but there you go.
And is it a quantity versus quality argument? So if there were 7.5 but very interrupted hours, is it still it's the 7.5, or are we looking for both a quality of a quantity?
No, we actually need the bookends. So the bookends are that we need to fit it. We need the time to fit in 7.5 hours, and if we don't have that time, then we can't move through those cycles. We can't go through the technical names of REM and non-REM, rapid eye movement sleep, which is at the top of our cycle, and then at the very deep end of our sleep, the REM sleeps. To fit those in and fit them into the patterns of the circadian rhythms, our night ones, we need those 7.5 hours at the very least.
Okay, so let's stop there before we go into what might be getting in the way of getting the 7.5 hours. Why is sleep so important? I mean, I get the obvious. We do it for makes up many years of our lives. But what's the relationship between sleep and performance? Why is it so important? Yes. And is it as important as eating or exercising?
So a peak performance neuroscientist like me, it's all about rest and recovery. And for every day, go to work, we actually need that time for our brain to rest and recover. And during that period, it has some incredibly important functions for us. And those functions are mainly clearing out the rubbish and in fact, taking in all of the things that learnt through the day and maintaining and keeping them. So apart from all of the other physiological things like the immune system, there's a central hormone called DHEA, which actually gets into place and then is putting out all of the various hormones that we need to ensure that happens. So the body actually does need rest, and it needs time to recover. But often we're not necessarily always sleeping just because we're tired, are we?
No, but in a perfect world, I'm going to say there's a lot of things that get in the way of that recovery part, right? And that feels like it's two things. It's either maybe this is a sign of getting older, but it's either the people who have difficulty dropping off, or
Yes.
those who wake up in the middle of the night needing to solve the problem from
Yes.
their workday, from their life.
Yes.
So there's two problems, but they're commonly reported as being really troublesome.
You know, they are particularly troublesome, and even some of those listening might have the problem of waking up way too early. You know, it's get up times 6, but what do you do when you wake up at 4 and you're wide awake? Is another one of the issues. All of these things revolve around that circadian rhythm and our brain waves. So, and our brain waves then generate our hormonal responses. So everything that I'm talking about today is all about ensuring that we can move from that busy, active thinking level. Right now, you know, everyone's in beta wave. You know, we're all, well, assuming, you know, just by topic, we haven't put someone to sleep already, which occurs when I'm lecturing. You know, you tell first years that the lecture is about sleep, and I can hear them snoring before I've finished my first sentence, and they think that's successful. But the reality of it is that shift from being in this state of awareness, this, you know, thinking, going through our day, part of our day circadians, if you like, are all about being able to shift, to move from that moment that we want to now go to sleep, that our brain wants to start regenerating, because that's what it's trying to do. It's trying to regenerate, and we've never really understood that.
So before we go to practical strategies on all the things that can help you get into that space,
and we will,
I imagine there's just going to be some cynical people who sit there going, yeah, but you have no idea what's going in my life at the moment. I'm juggling school, and my parents are aging, and my boss is evil, and there's a million things that just mean when I lie down, my head is just going bang, 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 bang.
Yeah.
Are the strategies we're going to talk about, are they enough to interrupt that? Or is the habitual nature of doing those strategies the thing that will help you?
They're absolutely enough to disrupt those. These are called bi-directional issues. In other words, you know, the age-old problem when I first started in this 40 years ago is, you know, which is the chicken and which is the egg? You know, I don't sleep, so therefore, you know, these things are even worse for me, or because these things are so bad, I'm not sleeping. Well, I've come to the point where I don't care. I mean, all I do know, you know, after all this time, could you believe it? The reality of it is that the central player in it is sleep. All of us at a very basic level know that we cope much better if we've had good sleep.
Okay, well, let's get down into how we can get that good sleep. So when reading your book, I was disappointed about a couple of things, is that I should stop eating and I shouldn't have a Pinot Noir before bed. So thanks for the advice, Stan. That was great. What are some of the best key things that we as adults can be doing in the evening, in those hours before bed?
Yes. Yeah, sure. Look, and these are what we commonly call hygiene factors or environmental factors. These, everyone listening will know some of these. You know, it's all about our diet, light, dark. It's about a whole range of things that can be try and turn this off and do that. You know, we've all heard those things, and I guess on the hygiene side, and it's it is covered a lot in the book, but it's very interesting. There are two things, because that stand out, are correlated to sleep. Now, the first of those, and it came out of the most recent study out of the US, and that was your mattress. The high correlation between the quality of your mattress and the quality of sleep. They did 3,000 people. And out of all of the hygiene factors that you could look at, the biggest one there, and I don't work for a mattress company, by the way.
That was the next question.
I am not research affiliated to any of them. But the outstanding hygiene factor, and I'm just putting it into that, you know, it's just that doesn't guarantee you're going to get the best. Now, your life is now enriched. The children aren't going to impact you at all. Life is going to suddenly change. But in terms of hygiene factors, get a good mattress. The second one, which has a fundamental impact, and that one was quality. The second one impacting the quantity, and I talk excellent sleep because we need to have quality and quantity in play here. And that quantity one was bedrooms without digital devices. None. And that's a challenge, I can tell you now. That is such a challenge. But they were the two. Now, this was a study, Gallup did the study, and that's the results have just come out. They did it through 2022, and those two factors on the hygiene side alone can have a significant impact on quantity and quality of sleep.
Okay, I want to go to digital devices, but before we go there, brought to you by Sealy Mattresses.
We should both contact them. I gave a lecture at NIM, the integrative medicine last night, and I had to quickly, amongst all of the clinicians there, say I am not representing Sealy here, or anyone else.
But what is it about the quality of the mattress? Because I imagine quality to somebody would be a very hard mattress as opposed to soft. Is it not so much the feel?
Whatever that is for you.
Okay. Okay.
So whether it's soft, I really, and there are all sorts of U-boot things happening. But clearly a poor mattress relates very, very much so to
something that's comfortable to you.
Absolutely. And the digital devices, and then you throw in all the other things about light and when did you eat and when did you, alcohol and everything else. It's quite a not long list, and you can, and if anyone's interested, they can pop onto my site, Mind Peak Performance, and they can do a sleep quiz on the hygiene factor. It's quite a neat little way that they can go and have a look.
Well, the digital device question, I'm going to ask you this one because this factored in for me this morning, is that I woke up at 5 o'clock and I clocked that it was too early. But then I thought I was going to talk to you today, and I came up with some really great questions in my head that I hadn't written down. And then I thought, should I get up and write them down? And then I got my phone. I know that's a fail. And then I wrote them on my phone so that I would remember them. But then the Twitter app was sitting there and I thought, I just got to check what's going on Twitter. And then, and then I was completely awake and it completely ruined the whole thing. So I know the answer is you shouldn't have your phone next to your bed, but people do, right? We use them for our alarm clocks. We can't leave them because we're married to them. I mean, how do you break that relationship up? Is it really simple as leaving it in another room and buying an old-fashioned alarm clock?
Or clearly some digital device, like a bit of soft light digital clock's fine. Yeah, because you might have, you still may need to have an alarm to go off somehow, that type of thing, obviously. But taking the viewpoint here, what we're now talking about, and this is in itself another big area of research going on, particularly interesting, I think, into the world of work, is social jet lag.
Oh, what's that?
Now just think about our world for a moment. What is it that we're doing before we go to bed? And just as you related to when we wake up, and sometimes even in the middle of the night, what are we doing? We're jumping onto our phones or our iPads or our PCs or whatever they are. And what that's doing is progressively over time is creating jet lag, the same effect as if you change time zones with your flying somewhere. We're actually creating a social jet lag for ourselves, so that we're in fact just think about it. You probably, if you needed to fit in 7.5 hours, which I would challenge everyone listening, first thing you do is challenge yourself into, well, if I have to try and get 7.5 hours in because I'm getting up at this time, what time do I need to go to sleep? What time do I need to put my head on the pillow and try to go to sleep here? First thing you need to do. After that, the problem becomes when you get to bed, well, I'll just have a little read through this article. I'll just have a little look at this. Oh, look at that. Something's going on in Facebook, and you start scrolling through. And then at the other end, you wake up a little bit early and you start doing it. All of a sudden, you're an hour or two
in deficit.
Yes. And then it mounts, and then it mounts, so that you in fact now, it doesn't just automatically readjust itself, because we still need our 5 90-minute cycles through there to actually process all the information from the day before, to regenerate all of our nerve endings in there, to the neurons, etc., to help us deal with the next day. Bi-directional, because as we start losing it, we start actually having problems through the day. The more problems we have through the day, the more we start to then have problems sleeping as well. So social jet lag, and particularly in the world of work, we've got a million things we need to do.
Well, I was going to ask that too. Two things. I mean, does a book count in the evening? I mean, that feels like a different reading relationship.
No, it's a very different. No, and again, the brain loves routine. Remember, it's structured for routine. It loves routine. That's why in the hygiene factors, never lie down at 5 o'clock, in front of the TV or something. You're going to fall. You've given it instruction. The routine's got to be a preparation to falling asleep, just as keeping the body cool. We need to. That's why a hot bath or a hot shower or something it isn't the hot bath or hot shower. It's the drop in your temperature. It's the biology of it. These are the sort of things all around us, and these processes. But this is a very new world to us, this social interaction into our brain, causing, well, there's really a jet lag. And I know that at some stage you wanted to talk about children, but here's a fact, a science-based fact, that our children are sleeping 1 hour less on average than 30 years ago. Why would that be?
You're going to say it's devices, aren't you?
Well, no. They're in the mix. But I think this is the world of work and the world that we find ourselves in now. We, with multiple parents working, children busy, coming home late, not having enough time with them, the opportunity to say, well, I haven't really been with you much today.
Yeah, I miss you.
Let's give it another hour. You don't come in anymore and demand the sleep time or set it up so that happens by then. There's this look of that you've left me all day, you've left me for half the night because you've been doing things, on your phone or with your clients. You're now through that. Where are my children?
Yeah.
Well, I'll get them off their devices to talk with me. And another, so that there's I believe a strong correlation between the growth in various mental disorders we're observing in children and their poor learning outcomes at the moment, even to the point of, and it's not reported, but there are some researchers going on now where just the number of children falling asleep in class is exponentially rising.
Yeah.
Falling asleep.
Yeah. Very interesting. One question around that morning time, just to go back before we go on to children, because I would like to, that idea, first thing in the morning, is that you roll out of bed, and we've talked about not touching our devices. But what happens if people just get up, they turn it on? So it's different from bedtime. Going to bed, you need to turn off. So don't do that. But in the morning, work starts. You're reading your emails. You think you're being unbelievably productive while you have your toast. You're responding to a colleague's Slack message, or you start work a lot earlier. And I suspect working from home hasn't helped this necessarily. I mean, I presume you're going to say that's doing life wrong. How should we wake up in the morning? What is a good wake up?
The first point of reference here is, what time had you planned to wake up in the morning? Because it's like a real mainstay. You know, it's the at what time have I now set my brain to, in fact, allow for the amount of sleep that I need? And Monday to Friday, it tends to be, well, I've got to get up at 6, I've got to get this organised, I've got to get that organised, and I've got to fit these things in. But in wintertime, of course, daylight hours are poor. So the circadian rhythm, which is driven by light and day, the Germans call it the Zeitgeber. Don't the Germans always have a great word for things? I don't know where they dream them up from, but they always sound so amazingly scientific and instructive. That means time giver. So remember, we're working in a world in which light sparks up the whole deal. Yeah, night sparks up the whole deal as well. You know, it sets the whole process up, and within that, this 24-hour time limit that we put in. Remember, we put that in. Who came up with 24 hours? It's not quite right. It doesn't fit everything. We should have a bit long, yeah, but I guess it wasn't metric, wasn't it? Or we'd have ended up with 30 or
that's right,
20. You know, but we obviously the English came up with it because we've got 12, haven't we? You know, but that was not scientific. They dreamed it up, but the point being that somewhere in that, while it's dark, we have to fit on average 7.5. But when you do wake up, it's really important to get yourself going, but it will be dependent on what happened during the night before. If you've had a good sleep, bounce up. But if you and during the day, you need to bounce up. During the day, remember, between 1 and 2, you're going to start to flag. You're going to run out of juice, and that's the time in which we can spark our brain up. We can actually, you know, push ourselves back. It's starting to push into alpha, you know, a bit sleepy, a bit groggy, throw in a bit of food, but we can actually spark ourselves up. We can use techniques like breathing, for example. You know, use certain types of breathing just to spark ourselves up, get our brain back into beta. Yeah,
get it going again.
Yeah, I thought I'd throw in some neuroscience terms quickly,
nice.
You know, a little bit of brain stuff, because why the hell have you got a neuroscientist here if I can't talk a little brain stuff along the way?
In terms of getting it back up, I mean, what's the role of a nap then? I mean, is a nap an evil thing to have for those who
Absolutely not, as long as it's no longer than 30 minutes. You go over 30 minutes, you're dead in the water. You've now entered a circadian rhythm, which you're going to feel wretched afterwards.
Okay, so
30 minutes. Less than 30 minutes, absolutely. You in fact, actually, you do that if you need it. Often, I found people would say, "Oh, you know, a nap is just what people do. It makes them better." Not true. You know, if you in fact had a poor sleep and a little bit of catch up at that point in your circadian rhythm is good. But if you're sleeping reasonably well, you don't need that. All you need is to practice a little bit of mindfulness, I might say, or relaxation technique or breathing just for a few minutes will actually bring your brain back into gear.
It'll get the job done.
Yeah, it will get the job done. And I talk about that in the book, and I talk about that at the website as well. And we can use technologies as well. So we've developed up technologies to actually stimulate these brain waves before sleep, during sleep, after sleep. We can help people along. They don't have to become, you know, sort of yoga disciples and some sort of meditative gurus, because I found in it was actually about 36 years of practice, that most of the working people I saw, and they were mostly, you know, sort of exec types, etc. You know, they'd last on my little recipe for about a week before they started forgetting about it and not doing it. But if I actually could give them something that they could do.
Something practical. And that certainly is true of the book. It has a lot of practical strategies in there. So let's talk about the small terrorists in people's houses. So you might have...
Is there a bias there?
Oh, no. Not speaking from experience at all. Just like sometimes a parent might have their act together, or parents have their act together, but you could have a child that either doesn't go to bed or wakes up way too early, or does I need a snack, I need a drink, I need to go to the toilet. I mean, there's a million strategies, a million personas kids have used to try and get out of sleeping. But if a child has a genuine sleep disturbance or a genuine bad habit in sleep, that has an effect on the parents. And then people start getting crabby, and then, it goes down a rabbit hole. Is it a case of, apply, your oxygen mask first or is this a case of we have to deal with these child sleep issues in order to get the parents back on an even keel?
Well, the first point here is that children don't have sleep problems. As far as they're concerned, the moment they woke up, yeah, I'm off. I'm ready to go. The fact that you were up all night with them, or it took you so long to get them to sleep, and then they're awake so early. And of course, as they get older and you move through the teenage ones who are rapidly pushing their sleep cycles back and back and back as far as they can, and then getting up being so hard, and even more importantly, hard on the parents. They don't see themselves as having a problem at all. And they're quite right in that sense. The problem relates to very much all around the brain's need for there to be a pattern, a scheduling. And while we do have that when they're babies, infants, and we think a lot about that, but we look at the scheduling side of things, the pattern. The brain needs pattern, and that's a very key part that I run through all of the. There are so many different issues that I'm sure people who are watching have with ranging from nightmares to all sorts of even down to incontinence issues. All of a sudden, there's so many things that can pop up, but they're generally all around the organization of time.
And that comes back to the parent, right? That's a little
bit. That is
absolutely
about the parent. Yeah. Absolutely. You can eventually get to the ghastly state where in therapies we sometimes the cycles are so out for children that we have to push them even further out to bring them back in, because it's just the nature of the brain. And I do go a little bit over that in the book. For those that are in that category, because I have come across that quite extensively over time. But it is scheduled, but there needs to be, everyone who's listening and has those children, you have to get over the guilt that you're not there as often or as much as you want to be, because you're trying to make ends meet, you're trying to get everything done in a day. And then there's I haven't even talked to them. I'll give them another. They're very quick to pick up from you another hour. Another hour, Mum. Another hour, Dad. And and then they'll lie in there and say, "Well, I'm not sleeping." Yeah. Why'd you send? I'll send them to bed, but they won't sleep. Well, they won't. They're not going to sleep just because they become so tired that they have to sleep, because then you're in a never-ending cycle of poor sleep.
And is there a correlation between, a child that doesn't seem to need as much sleep and the need for you to buy a trampoline? I'm not associated to a trampoline company, but that idea is there a link between energy output and just exhaustion and tiredness in children, or is that just a bit of a myth?
No, that is a myth. No. We do need to physically recover. There's no doubt about that, and sleep does provide, a whole neurological and biological fix in terms of our physiology, but it is not the overriding factor in here. The brain moves through cycles called circadian rhythms. It moves through brain waves, and it moves through hormonal processes, and it does all of those to engage the immune system and the learning system. And they are irrelevant. This whole sleep, it is irrelevant to how tired you may or may not be. They do play together, but they're irrelevant to an extent of just how our biological systems operate.
Need a
And they're
story.
driven by light and day. Bookends.
Funny that.
Yeah, bookends as part of the process. So it is more complicated than it looks, but we can use these very same technologies to help us move quickly into them. And I'm very pleased to say that the technology that I've been working with, in this sort of sound, I call it sound science, but very effective with getting children to move from beta to alpha and deeper, just by having a quick, 10, 20-minute listen, are very, very effective, particularly when you haven't quite got the scheduling right yet. You haven't kept up to it. You have to seem like you're so mean.
No, I think the message is parents might just need to do some parenting. That's my takeaway.
Well, look, it's one of those surprising little things that pops up every now and again. Although, they live in a world in which, it's cohabitation in the world out there. It's like, but Mary does, and Bill isn't, and Jack's still up, wanting to play on this device, this game with me. He's still, it's hard to be that parent in the midst of all the others, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But I can tell you what was my takeaway from this, Stan, is that this is so practical. I wasn't sure what to expect, but, apart from the fact there's some great science in here, but I really wanted to get to all the things I'm doing wrong. And thanks for that. It was really helpful to find what I'm doing wrong, but what I need to do right.
Well, there's absolutely an upside to doing things right here, because your brain will love you for it.
Well, we love you for joining us today and tell us about it. So I really appreciate it. I'm going to get you back because I love the work that you're doing in neuroscience and AI. And I know AI is another area that a lot of businesses and people are going to be very interested in watching over the coming years. So you have to promise to come back and talk to us again. No, absolutely. Would love to. Thank you, Stan. I really appreciate it. Thanks for joining us. And thanks everybody for coming, and go and have a nice lunch and get a good sleep tonight, 7.5 hours. Thanks, Dan.